Professors FM.
I'm Bridget Stomberg.
And I'm Lisa DeSimone.
And this is Taxes for the Masses.
Today's episode is on individual income tax credits for the purchase of electric vehicles.
The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 significantly revised federal tax incentives for purchases of electric vehicles, or EVs. With the change in administration, many of those incentives are in jeopardy. In today's episode, we discuss the current state of federal tax incentives for EV purchases and how Congress could modify those during President Trump's term.
Hello, B.
Hello, Lisa.
All right. Once again, we're discussing another of President Trump's executive orders that has tax implications. And I get the feeling we're going to be doing a lot of this in the next 4 years.
I get the same feeling.
Yeah.
I get the same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But to be fair, we knew this was coming.
Okay.
So if you recall in our episodes on the presidential candidates' tax proposals that we ran in the fall of 2024,
I have blocked those from my memory.
I figured, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
We noted that much of Trump's attention during this term might be focused on undoing elements of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 because it was Biden's most significant tax and climate legislation during his presidency.
Okay. And in fairness, I believe we also speculated that former Vice President Harris would likely do the same to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which was Trump's signature tax legislation during his first term, had she been elected.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. For the foreseeable future, unfortunately, it does seem like whoever is in charge is just going to undo what the former guy did.
Yep.
And I did choose Guy intentionally because also for the foreseeable future, it does not seem like a woman will be in charge.
Yeah, cool. So congratulations. We have been recording for, I think, less than 2 minutes now, and I'm completely depressed and I'm going to go lay down for a little while. Do you remember the good old days when you'd save your Stormy Bear attitude for like the last segment of the show as opposed to like the first 2 minutes? Like maybe we should go back to that world.
I do remember that, but it's 2025, baby. I am just taking my cues from the universe and spreading the doom and the gloom around evenly all day long. Just spread it around.
This is why I barely watch the news anymore.
Also, I don't know if I shared this with you, but my husband and my child bought me a stuffed animal. Do you know about the stuffed animal that's in my office?
No. Can I see it?
It is. Hold, please.
How would I know about it if I can't see it?
Well, I did post about it on social media.
And are you not aware that I've been off social media for a year? Where have you been?
So are you familiar with Bats Maru from Hello Kitty?
The absurdity of that question is astounding. I have not watched news or social media for a year, nor do I have kids. I do not know anything about Hello Kitty.
Okay, so Bats Maru is like the grumpy bad penguin from Hello Kitty.
Okay.
So, and you call me Stormy Bear, right? We know that there is a Care Bear. So my family bought me a stuffed animal that is Bats Maru dressed up.
Now that is a Mama Stom face if I've ever saw one.
So this is 2025 in a stuffed animal form, and this is the energy that I am bringing.
Okay, I look forward to you posting a picture of this on social media when you are promoting this episode.
Okay, will do. So I guess we should get on with it.
It seems fair. But at least you got me laughing again. I'm no longer ready to drink myself under the table, so thank you for that.
Good job. Good job, Bats Maru. All right, goals for today's sunny episode are first, to explain the current state of federal EV incentives for individuals. Mm-hmm. Second, to discuss some evidence on their effectiveness. And third, to contemplate how President Trump's executive order could affect EV sales and just all things EV.
Okay, since you got me in such a good mood again, I'm going to kick it off. As you said in the intro, the Inflation Reduction Act modified federal tax incentives around the purchase of EVs. In other words, these credits are not new.
No.
The federal government has offered maximum tax credits of $7,500 to individuals for the purchase of EVs since 2008. But earlier credits for low emissions vehicles have been around since 2005, during all the way back to the W. Bush administration. So we're talking 20 years here.
Righto. And these low emissions credits introduced by a Republican administration.
Fair point. Yes.
So the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA, as we're going to call it, modified the EV credit in several ways, and we're just going to walk through those. So first, for a car to qualify for the credit, final assembly of the car must take place in North America, which precludes electric vehicles assembled exclusively outside of the U.S. from qualifying.
Okay, hold your horses there. I've heard a lot of politicians argue that these EV credits are benefiting China, but you just said that if everything's produced outside the US, it doesn't get an EV credit. So, yeah, explain.
No, cannot. First guess is maybe they're bad at geography, like worse at geography than I am.
Okay, nobody is worse at geography than I am, but
Okay.
That seems unlikely to me for Congress to get it that wrong.
Yes, because, okay, fine, you and I are very bad at geography, but we both know that China is not actually part of North America.
Yes, I at least know that.
I'm with you, and it's not totally clear to me how a tax law that offers a credit only for the purchase of vehicles finally assembled in North America is a huge boon to China, especially because this is a new part of the credit.
So maybe it's that final assembly language that's the key. It seems like maybe, the fear could be that parts or intermediate assembly is predominantly happening in China, and then we're just doing like a tiny portion that we're calling final assembly in North America.
I think that's possible, but as we just said, the intermediate assembly could have already been happening, so this credit probably isn't making it worse.
Okay, agreed. Yep.
So unclear. Second provision that was imposed by the Inflation Reduction Act is that the electric vehicle must meet requirements related to critical mineral and battery components to qualify.
Okay.
Now, that's a lot of fancy words, but essentially it means that beginning last year in 2024, vehicles cannot have battery components that are sourced from certain foreign countries, including, wait for it, China.
China. Okay. There's also been some criticism that the credits are a handout to the wealthy, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, but it doesn't sound like something Biden would do. It doesn't sound very Biden-y to me.
No, and I'm glad that your spidey sense went off there, because the other thing the Inflation Reduction Act did was impose brand new, never before, limits on the manufacturer's suggested retail price, or MSRP, for qualifying EVs. So to qualify for the credit, the EV has to cost less than $80,000 if it's an SUV, a van, or a truck, and it is capped at $55,000 for all other vehicles.
Interesting. Okay.
On top of that, the act imposed, again, new consumer income limitations. So if you're single and you make more than $150,000, you can't get the credit even if the car itself qualifies.
Okay. Yeah. So assuming higher earners buy more expensive cars, which I think is a reasonable assumption, these two provisions should really concentrate the tax benefits towards the bottom part of the income distribution, based both on how much you're earning and the affordability of the car.
Agreed. And then on top of it, the act created a new $4,000 credit for the purchase of used EVs. Again, first time that anything like that has been available.
So again, assuming lower income individuals are the ones who tend to buy less expensive and perhaps more used cars than new cars, these federal benefits are available just for them.
Absolutely. Last thing the act did, which is kind of interesting, is there used to be a cap at the manufacturer level. So once, as a manufacturer, like your Ford, once you sold 200,000 electric vehicles,
Yes.
then no more of your cars could qualify for the credit. The Inflation Reduction lifted that cap, and that particular part of the provision benefited companies that had already met or were close to meeting that threshold, like Tesla, Ford, GM, and Toyota.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
That is literally all I know.
Okay. Let's move on then to a discussion of how effective these credits are at changing individuals' buying habits. As with any tax policy, it's really difficult to isolate and quantify the direct cause of anything going on with taxes, especially because these new provisions become effective after a period of car supply shortages due to global supply issues. around the pandemic. So we've got a whole lot of other factors going on here that could impact demand.
Thank you very much, because that is a super important caveat and a big confound to studying economic impact in this particular setting.
All right. So if you believe that gas vehicles are harmful to the environment,
And if you want to not be harmful to the environment,
then the goal is to get consumers to substitute electric for gas. And you can do that by taxing gas vehicles or subsidizing electric vehicles. Researchers from the National Bureau of Economic Research estimate that the best way to reduce the harmful environmental effects of gas vehicles would be to tax them. But if that isn't an option, then the researchers estimate that a uniform EV subsidy of around $6,500 is second best. So at least theoretically, the credit as it stands seems to be moving in the right direction.
yeah.
Nice.
All right, we've discussed the current state of EV credits in the US and provided some evidence that they have strong design elements and can be effective in increasing EV sales.
Right. So let's move on to our final goal of thinking about how EV sales might change in the near future. And for that, we are on to the Unleashing American Energy executive order signed by President Trump January 20th, 2025. The order, among other things, calls for the elimination of the EV quote mandate and the promotion of true customer choice. I don't know what most of those words mean, so where would you like to start?
Okay, I'm going to start with mandate, because when I saw I didn't read the order first. I read a news article, and then it said, Trump outlaws the EV mandate, and I thought, well, we don't have an EV mandate.
Yeah, what is this mandate?
Unclear, because in the U.S.
Okay.
right now you are not being mandate to me means mandatory, forced, compelled.
Agreed, yes.
I don't have an EV. I have a car. It's not an EV. Nobody
Same.
forced me to buy an EV.
Same.
Now, some citizens are receiving tax subsidies for EV purchases. That's what we just talked about. But
Yeah.
a subsidy is not a mandate.
No, it's an incentive.
And as a matter of fact, in 2024, hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrid vehicles, and battery electric vehicles totaled only about 21% of all new car sales in the U.S. So the vast majority of cars sold in the U.S. are not even EVs.
Okay, now I have heard that California passed a state law saying that by
Yes.
2035, all new cars sold in California will be zero emission vehicles. But you can still buy and drive a gas car after 2035.
Yep.
Just can't be new, right?
No.
And also, last I checked, and please check me on this, but California is not the federal government.
No, I think two things we can say with certainty on this show. China is not part of North America, and California is separate from the federal government.
See, we are good at geography.
Low-hanging fruit. But no worries, because President Trump has promised to stop that California law as well. The executive order says that, quote, ideologically motivated regulations have reduced job creation. And that's sort of the reasoning behind eliminating this EV mandate.
Okay.
So I want to know, what evidence do we have on the broader economic benefits of these EV credits, how they've affected the economy, how they've affected job creation?
I would like to know what regulations are not ideologically motivated.
Exactly. Yes, all the things.
But back to your question. Again, it's difficult to answer and subject to caveats, but there is a pretty cool website by the Blue Green Alliance Foundation that tracks investment in jobs related to EVs. And it shows that there's been over $150 billion of investment between 2022 and 2024, much of it focused on manufacturing batteries because of that critical battery component requirement to the legislation.
Yep.
And the creation of over 150,000 jobs in states like Georgia and Texas.
Okay, we also know that I'm not great with numbers, but 150,000 new jobs doesn't sound like reduced job creation to me.
It does not, but the order is not exclusively targeted at EVs, so it's hard to know exactly where the job loss has been as a result of these, quote, ideologically motivated regulations.
Fair enough. The order also pauses billions of dollars in federal funding allocated through the Inflation Reduction Act for EV charging stations around the U.S.
What the order didn't do and what it cannot do is dismantle the existing EV tax credit. Congress would need to do that. And if a bill gets started, it would be likely to pass along party lines. And in fact, such a bill already does exist.
Yay!
A senator from Wyoming introduced the, wait for it, ELITE Act.
Ooh.
This is a fun one.
Yeah, what does this one stand for?
Eliminating Lavish Incentives to Electric Vehicle Act. That's I don't see a T. I see an ELI and then an EVA. It's the ELEVA Act, but whatever. We're going to call it ELITE.
It's fine. It's fine.
This bill was actually introduced back in May of 2024, and it would repeal the EV credit.
Okay, so now the $1 million question is, how likely is that to happen? And I think the answer is it's unclear. So although Republicans do control the House, their majority is very small.
Yes.
And on top of that, and this is the one that stuck out to me the most, have you heard of a gentleman named Elon Musk?
Yes, I believe he's my neighbor. Not literally, but you know what I mean.
Fellow Texan. He's the head of this new Doge, I don't even know.
I keep wanting to say Doge, but I don't watch the news, so I don't know how people are pronouncing it.
Unclear. But whatever this new Department of Governmental Expenditure, whatever it is, efficiency, whatever it is. He's also, just FYI, the CEO of Tesla, which was a clear winner of this EV credit.
So he maybe has a little bit of a conundrum on his hands, huh?
I mean, hello. And on top of that, Tesla is one of the largest investors in EV technology, according to that website. And they account for nearly half of all EVs sold in the US. So yeah, he seems to be between a rock and a hard place here.
And Tesla isn't the only car company interested in keeping the credit, right? Others have lobbied the president, and Ford's executive chairman recently told reporters, quote, obviously we'd like to keep the tax credit, and Trump is very aware of how we feel.
Okay, so what now? If you are a U.S. consumer, this actually might be a really good time to buy an EV if you're in the market, because doing so could become much more expensive if Congress does, in fact, repeal or reduce the existing credit. So get your $7,500 while you can.
Sure, yep. As for China, things really aren't so clear, right? I mean, it's pretty clear that some are speculating that repealing the tax credit could actually make it more difficult for U.S. auto manufacturers to compete with Chinese rivals.
Yep.
And if the price of U.S. EVs rise, then they become less attractive relative to lower cost Chinese models. Now, Trump could try to address that price difference through tariffs, his new favorite toy. But either way, EVs become more expensive to U.S. consumers.
So we've covered what happens to consumers, covered what happens to Chinese manufacturers. As for U.S. car manufacturers, they also, as we mentioned, aren't thrilled with the notion of the EV credit going away. But they might even be grumpier if Congress were to dismantle another provision of the Inflation Reduction Act that offers car manufacturers a $35 tax credit per kilowatt hour for each U.S.-made battery cell. By some estimates, that credit cuts the cost of manufacturing a battery by about 1/3.
Wow. Okay. And that separate credit likely also contributes heavily to the investment and job growth that we're seeing in this sector.
No doubt. The only trick, and again, you're the economist here, so check me if I go wrong, but you need demand for EVs to have demand for EV batteries.
I believe that checks out, yes.
Okay. So killing the credit for the purchase of EVs might actually indirectly, or I guess directly, hurt the impact of the credit for producing components of EVs.
Given that they are complementary goods, yes. The only part of your statement that did not check out is that I am not an economist.
Lies.
All right, so it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think this episode is another nice example of how tax law can address non-fiscal problems.
Yep.
If you think that EVs can help address some environmental issues, using tax policy in the form of subsidizing EVs is one way to do that.
Absolutely. And as is very on brand for us, you say the intellectual thing. I'm going to say the snarky thing, which is that the good part of this episode for me is that Congress is still coming correct with those acronyms.
The ELITE.
I mean, the ELITE Act. We really, I feel like they really hit their stride in the past couple of years. Guilty, deep.
Yeah.
And I'm just, the Ivory Tower Act. I'm just really happy to see that we're not,
Slacking
easing off
off.
the gas. Yeah.
Yep. When it comes to creating fancy acronyms.
Yes.
Yep. It is the one thing, I think this is true. It is the one thing that Congress has consistently done well at least since we've been doing the pod.
Totally. Now, as you noted, this one might not check out.
Oh no, it's total nonsense. I think it's the LAVA Act, but whatever.
A for effort. Okay, the bad. Let me pick up my Bats Maru dressed as Stormy Bear when I say this. EV credits, ideologically motivated. I think you could argue that almost every policy we have is ideologically motivated. It's just whose ideology.
Exactly.
The thing that I think is harmful in this situation, this is just an example of it, is this flip-flopping of tax policy, right?
Yes.
And again, we said that Harris probably would have done the same thing, but it's like we have 4 years or 2 years of one thing, and then the next group comes in and just completely dismantles it.
Yes.
It's hard for businesses and individuals to do any sort of planning, forecasting, living their lives when everything is going from yes to no back and forth on a very short period of time. So I think some stability would be nice. And this executive order is an example of the opposite of that.
That doesn't sound like it's going to lead to economic growth to me.
No, because you can't be strategic when you're just putting out fires all the time.
All the freaking time. Yes.
And the other thing I'll say again, like, is this credit perfect? No, absolutely not. Nothing is. So if you don't like parts of it, like maybe don't say final assembly, maybe say full assembly, like tweak the credit that you have. Don't burn the house down because you don't like the wallpaper in the bathroom. Like tweak what we have, keep the incentive there, but do it in a way that aligns more with your ideology.
So talking about ideology, I think we're moving down into ugly territory here. And let's just not overstate the impact of tax credits.
Yes.
The EV credit is not a mandate. It's an incentive.
Oh, yeah.
We still see the vast majority of new car sales being gas vehicles.
It's just leveling the playing field, right? The average price for an electric vehicle in June of 2024 was $56,000, and the average price of a gas vehicle was $49,000. Do you know how different those are? $7,000.
It's almost like there was a logic to the amount of the credit that they set.
The credit is essentially equating the two. It is basically saying, hey, consumer, we're going to subsidize it. We're not going to make you pay for the more expensive choice. We're going to, equate the two. And so it's not tipping the scale in favor of EVs on average.
No, I think it's providing more choice to consumers is one way of looking at it.
Yes. Are you going to run out and get an EV anytime soon?
Oh no, I am fully backed into depressed territory. I'm not leaving my house.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You don't need a car to do that.
Well, that's all we have time for today.
Be sure to join us for more tax nerdery on future episodes of Taxes for the Masses.